It seems like every day you hear something about the economic or political rise of China. While many people think that China is on its way to becoming a global power, others worry about the soft power implications of the Chinese influence abroad. China's intense investment in Africa is the subject of much controversy. Is the world's most populous country starting to colonize Africa all over again? Are they merely investing in the development of a continent? Let's find out. We all know one thing to be true of China: they never mess around. There's a reason that China has become a global superpower in such a short amount of time, and it's because they put their money where their mouth is. If you think that Chinese President Xi Jinping is going to sit on his hands while the rest of the world gets all the goodies in Africa, then you really don't know much about Xi. Let me tell you why China's leader is increasing his country's presence in Africa and how he plans to colonize the continent without firing a single shot. China's loans to African nations are often not paid back. This means that China can force African countries into becoming indebted to them. China's loans are tied to the purchase of Chinese products, which makes it harder for local industries to compete with Chinese imports and exports. The money spent on these loans has been used in many cases by African governments to fund Chinese infrastructure projects in China, as well as military projects and security operations funded by the Chinese government, or through Chinese companies operating on the continent. China also has provided military support for some African nations, including Angola, Djibouti, Sudan, and Zimbabwe. These military operations have been carried out through Chinese companies operating in Africa, or by sending in their own soldiers and pilots under contracts with African governments. In addition to providing military support for some African countries, China has also been involved in many peacekeeping operations on the continent. One example is its involvement in the United Nations peacekeeping missions, such as Mission de l'Organisation des Nations Unies pour la Stabilisation en République démocratique du Congo, MONUSCO. Long, right? Well, in English that basically means United Nations Organization Stabilization Mission in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. China, once a bastion of cheap goods and low-cost manufacturing, has become an economic powerhouse in recent decades. As their economy grows, so does their influence on other countries. China is now an industrial giant with an enormous amount of power over the global economy. But at what cost? China's influx of cheap products is crushing African producers. China's cheap products are flooding the market, hurting local manufacturers. The cheap products are making it difficult for African producers to compete and end up laying off workers and closing down factories due to its lower profits. These harmful practices also impact the economy, which relies on farmers and manufacturers for employment opportunities and tax revenue, as well as consumers who depend on those businesses for their livelihoods. But wait a minute, because it doesn't end there. Because this also leads to environmental damage if unregulated waste disposal practices are not properly managed, and oftentimes they are not. China is funding many infrastructure projects in Africa, but there are grave concerns about what the future may hold for the continent. Many of these projects are being built by Chinese labor using Chinese materials and money. These projects also contain technology that the Africans do not yet have access to or know how to use properly. This can lead to problems down the road when they need maintenance on their equipment or want to expand their operations. China is also using these infrastructure projects as a way to gain political power in African countries. It is doing this through a variety of methods, including offering loans and development assistance. It also includes building hospitals and universities that give the Chinese an opportunity to influence how people think about them. The construction industry is a big part of Africa's economy, so it makes sense for China to invest heavily in this sector. There are many benefits for both countries involved in these projects, since they allow Africa to build up its infrastructure while helping China gain power over them as well. And they are being mistreated in the process. Chinese workers earn less than their African counterparts and are often mistreated, according to a report published by Amnesty International. They also receive fewer benefits and have inferior safety equipment. A Chinese construction company using Chinese workers for road building in Zambia's Copperbelt province was found guilty of paying its employees $200 a month, rather than the $500 it promised them when they signed on for work abroad, according to Amnesty International. And these employees were housed in shacks with no running water or electricity, which were located far away from where they worked, so as to not disturb the local residents' peace and quiet. China has been pouring billions into Africa as part of its Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, which aims to create an extensive network of trade routes through Asia, Europe, Africa, and Oceania that will help China expand its global footprint. But some African countries are concerned about China's growing influence over their economies and are worried about how this could affect their sovereignty. China is a major player in the African construction industry, but it doesn't treat its employees well. The Chinese government has been sending thousands of Chinese workers to Africa to build large infrastructure projects. These include roads, railways, airports, and stadiums. You might be surprised to learn that China is not allowing African workers to work on these projects. Instead, they are sending Chinese workers who are paid less than local workers, and therefore cannot afford to pay taxes or social security. They also do not have to learn the local language, which limits their ability to communicate with locals who speak French or English. The Chinese government has also failed to ensure adequate safety precautions for these workers. In fact, many have died in construction accidents due to their lack of protective gear and training. The result? A growing resentment by local people toward Chinese investment in their countries. Resentment that could potentially lead to political instability or even violence between ethnic groups. In recent years, China has become a major investor and trading partner in many African economies. The country has invested more than $200 billion in Africa since 2000, according to the Heritage Foundation. China's relationship with Africa has been under scrutiny since it began investing in the continent decades ago. Many believe that China's main objective for doing business in Africa is to obtain natural resources for its own use at low prices, while providing little benefit in return. Some argue that China's growth model may not be sustainable over time because it relies heavily on exports, which some economists say will lead to a slowdown in growth if there isn't enough demand from other countries around the world. China and Africa's close relationship is a topic that should better be understood and discussed without fear or bias. It's only then that we can begin to find a solution that benefits both sides of the equation. I'm sure there are a lot of factors to consider in forming an opinion on this issue, but understanding China's motivations can help us get closer to finding a solution. So what do you think about China's movement into Africa? Do you think it will help African countries to become developed? Or do you think China is just trying to sink Africa even further? Let us hear from you in the comment section below.